When most of us interact with blockchain technology, we are experiencing the end user product. But the smart contracts that run these projects are a bit more complicated. Akin to code, smart contracts require specific programming language to make them do the things they do. Well, what if it wasn't that difficult to create a smart contract? And what if you could write one with plain English? Today, we welcome Henning Diedrich to the show to discuss how Lexon solves this problem. The first architect of IBM's blockchain Hyperledger and liaison to the Ethereum developing team, which includes Vitalik, Henning knows a thing or two. He might even teach us three things today on this I can code 3 lines of basic, so what? Episode number 691 of the Bad Crypto Podcast.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, ignition.
Who's bad?
Welcome to the show. Joel Comm here. Travis Wright there. I cannot program my way out of a paper bag. How about you, Sir Lord?
You know, with the new ChatGPT 4's code interpreter, you probably can code way more than you probably thought you could.
Maybe I should go in there and say, ChatGPT, help me get out of this paper bag.
Yeah,
Write me code like, to get out.
Turn right.
Yeah. I actually... When I bought my first computer in 1980, the TRS-80 Model 1, BASIC was the programming language, and I learned just enough. You know, you'd go line 10, print, hello, I'm a computer, line 20, go to 10, and it would just fill the screen with, hello, I'm a computer, and that's about it.
I remember that. I remember sitting in Mrs. Walker's class in high school, learning computers, and I was like, this is so stupid. Like, we don't need any of this yet. I go, it's not ready yet. I'm not going to put any brain power towards this yet. And what I literally did in my junior year is at the semester, I said, I'm transferring out of this computer class. She's a horrible teacher. I'm gonna go work in the library for that hour. And so my junior year, I said, I'm done with this. This is horrible. I'm gonna come back and learn it later. And I just could see it was just, she was a horrible teacher. And she just had an attitude. And I was like, I don't want to even sit in this lady's class. She makes this not fun at all. And for me to not want to be in a computer class, you know how shitty that class had to be?
Oh, yeah. Well, see, I imagine that's not what actually happened. What actually happened is you were like, I want to be a Broadway dancer. And you leapt out of the room like a gazelle.
Right. I was like, dude, I've already found Carmen Sandiego. How many times? Broder bound. I've got to figure it out. What next? I'm done. And then she's like, well, I think that was part of the problem is I figure shit out a little too quick sometimes. And then I disrupt everybody else because they're still trying to figure it out. And so then I'm cracking jokes and then I get in trouble. So that's what happened when I was younger and probably still today.
I imagine that's a similar story from just about every stand-up comedian that's ever been, right? In school, they were telling jokes and getting in trouble and being sent to the principal or dean's office. And, you know, their grades were probably average because they were focused on making people laugh rather than being a straight A student.
Yeah, my mom would always get phone calls and then they would be like, you know, your son said this today, it totally disrupted the class. And she's like, well, what did he say? And then she said, well, we were in this and he learned this and he said this. And she would bust out laughing like, oh my God, that's pretty funny. So my mom was not a deterrent. And what was funny was at that time for me is that they still did SWATs in school. And so I would disrupt the class. I literally got to the point I'd be like, okay, is this funny enough is it worth a SWAT? Okay, this is worth a SWAT. And then I would have to go out in the hall. Then the principal would see me. All right, come on, Travis, let's get a couple SWATs. And then got a couple SWATs and then went back to class and sat down a little more gingerly.
Did you have your own SWAT team there on call? And you'd go home and say, Mom, I told a SWAT-worthy joke today. And she'd go, attaboy.
This joke was totally SWAT-worthy. Listen to this one. Oh, actually, I did have one that was SWAT-worthy. I tell this one. So I was in 8th grade in Mrs. Hedger's class, and Mrs. Hedger, she did not like me so much at that time. I ended up being one of her favorite students because she ended up teaching in high school too. But she was teaching 8th grade English, And she said, I said something, and she made me go out in the hall with the dictionary, and from the letter I, start at the beginning of I and write every definition all the way down to idiot. So I get down to idiot, and I go, idiot, someone who acts as an imbecile or needs attention and blah, blah, blah. And I go, dot, dot, also see Mrs. Hedger. My mom busted up laughing on that one. She cannot believe I had balls to say that.
That's perfect. Love it. All right. Well, on a completely different subject, making smart contracts easy to write is the subject matter of our interview today with Henning Diedrich. I think you guys are going to like this as he talks about symbolic AI, the eternity chain. This is a dude who's been there from the beginning of Ethereum. So listen in. Here we go. We do talk a lot about AI, not just on this show, but also on the Bad AI show. And many people want to know, what is the connection between AI and cryptocurrency, blockchain, smart contracts? Well, today's guest is going to help bring it all together for us, to unify it. His name is Henning Diedrich, and Henning is the creator of Lexon, which is a programming language that makes blockchain smart contracts readable in plain English. He's got a storied background with IBM. He was the first architect of the blockchain Hyperledger. He's worked with the Ethereum development team. I think this guy probably knows what he's talking about. So Henning, welcome to the Bad Crypto Podcast, sir.
Hey, great. Thanks for having me.
Go ahead and fill in the gaps there of your history in blockchain and who you've worked with, so we get a better feel of who we're talking to here.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I basically have been part of the Ethereum crowd when they came to Berlin for the first time. And I was working in mobile payment at that point in time. And a colleague of mine never stopped talking about crypto and how that would be so much better as compared to how we were trying to address dinosaur APIs that were so old that people literally forgot how to use them, trying to connect smartphones to banks, basically. So I hung around, and I was actually there on DEF CON 0, and was, of course, fascinated. For me, I guess the big thing about blockchain was that it solved something that I thought couldn't be solved, right? And that was Bitcoin, and all of a sudden, oh, yeah, right, that's how you do it. It was just a genius solution. And then I found that underneath, even Bitcoin had actually a programming language, right? Script, and I was hooked. There was a lot of things coming together really from my programming experience, because I had been doing high velocity databases where you also have this challenge of consensus between different machines. I've been doing cryptography as in different use cases, but all of that was basically coming together. And then, long story short, at some point I was summoned to San Francisco, became one of the first dozen who was basically tasked finding out what IBM should be doing in blockchain. And before I knew it, I was basically the technical architect of Hyperledger. So that was a real fascinating journey, of course. IBM at first was exploring whether they would get fully behind Ethereum. And I would have wished actually for this to happen, but then it was also an awesome opportunity, of course, to create a blockchain that had a very strong focus, a very good focus on how businesses would be using blockchain. So that was also a very interesting experience on the corporate side. Like, it's a huge company. It's not necessarily that it always would listen to the technicians. There are a lot of marketing aspects that they're thinking about. And then at a certain point in time, I drifted away from that and became part of a department within IBM that was, again, working with Ethereum. And then I was a little bit of the go-between between the Ethereum world and IBM, and giving talks, becoming Mr. Blockchain, because at that point, nobody yet was talking about blockchain at IBM. It was still not quite clear whether that topic would be something that IBM would really bet on. And then it was really interesting that when IBM joined the field and really got behind blockchain, came out with Hyperledger, that was actually really good for the entire field at that point, because it was a little bit in a slump, but then IBM, the big name behind that was really pushing new life, breathing new life in the whole industry. Later, I was actually confronted with the legal aspects of blockchain, smart contracts. And one of the monikers back then, it was like IBM was talking about the democracy of things. Like that was the IoT concept with blockchain that IBM was pushing at that point. And the question was, what happens if a smart contract is even just frivolously sued, right? And you can't even stop it. So that's where this idea emerged, that it would be great if smart contracts would be readable, right? For not only programmers, but for everybody. And this was something that I then later pursued when I left, after I left IBM, I was more interested in these discussions about what is a smart contract in the first place. There was this discussion about is code law, laws, code, and so on. And over some Christmas break, I was sitting down basically and checking whether it could work, that you have a programming language that is completely human readable, like that really reads like English text. And it looked like, yeah, it was in reach that you could actually create something crazy like this. I had created programming languages before. And because in crypto, everybody was talking about it, but nobody was really sitting down doing it, I felt like, okay, maybe I give this a try. And then I was lucky that I was in the talk circuit back then and met law professors through Constance Choi's Koala, where I would give you keynotes and talks explaining blockchain to normal people. At this point, I also wrote this book back then. Do you know this book, maybe by any chance? Did you ever see that?
It's called Ethereum.
It's called Ethereum, right? It was the first book on Ethereum that I wrote back then. So I was always interested in bringing the technology.
And what year would that have been by chance? What ballpark time frame?
Pardon?
What year did that book come out?
Yeah.
That was 2017, 2016, 2017. So it was really the first book around, right? It was exactly when things took off, and it was an Amazon #1 bestseller. And it was a really amazing experience because I had just written it like I wanted, just tried my hand at doing this, and then it was a huge success, and people were coming back and thanking me for how this changed their lives, and it was very, very rewarding in the end. So in the same spirit of basically explaining or making accessible what for us technicians is like our own separate world, Lexon, this programming language basically that reads like normal English, is something that you can write smart contracts in. And what I'm using under the hood is stuff that is basically AI technology that has been developed for symbolic AI, which is very complementary what we have now, which is generative AI. But it's more about executing stuff, more like having a model within your computer that you can then act on, right? It's not so much about generating text in an intelligent way, but it's about using this text. And it really has a completely different inner working, right? The number crunching that you use from generative AI, like the feeding and training the artificial intelligence, that all works completely different. It's just not churning these crazy amounts of data, but it's instead working with very precise models of what the actual structure of a document is. So, and that is
just pretty fascinating. Let's take a step back real quick, because I have a feeling that we can wind you up and you can just go on and on and on. We gotta get a pause in every once in a while. So I want to make sure that people understand what's going on with this. So you basically created this plain text, what says on the website, lexon.org, a plain text programming languages that basically allow for digital contracts and laws to create this trustless layer between text and the legal system. So is what you're saying is any attorney, anyone can basically say, bop, 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 here it is, here's our legal jargon BS, and then generate a smart contract? Or are people taking their smart contracts they've already written and then plug it into your system and translate it into lawyerese? Or are you just writing it directly inside Lexon and executing it from there? I don't think I fully understand that.
Yeah, thanks for giving me the chance here to clarify. So Lexon is its own language. It is a subset of English, which is why when you write in it, you can perfectly read it. And if you scroll down a little bit, you also see an example. There you go. Like on the left-hand side, that's Lexon. right?
Lex
And
escrow. So this is code we're looking at here.
exactly.
This is actually the scripting language itself that I'm reading, which is reading like a poem. It says Lex escrow. Payer is a person. Payee is a person. Arbiter is a person. Payments an amount. The payer pays a payment into escrow, appoints the payee, appoints the arbiter, and also fixes the fee. This is a smart contract I'm looking at here.
Yes, exactly. And I'll be happy to live demo to a certain degree how this is automatically translated into a blockchain smart contract. The trick, so to say, is that this is a subset of English. Like you couldn't just write anything you wanted. It's not about taking just any contract and filling it in there. It has a very clear grammar that is unambiguous, which is super important. And it also has a certain document structure, which is taken from how contracts work. Like they have the definitions in the beginning, then they have a recital, then they have clauses, but you really have to keep to that, right? So the focus is really about creating readability for everybody, to be inclusive for everybody to come and join and double check what the contents actually is and broadening what it means, what the development team actually is, right?
So is there an attorney on the team? Yeah, it's like, because it's like you're creating this new language. It's almost like somebody would need to have expertise in law and have expertise in blockchain to be able to create this. So you've created this. You told us your background. You worked at IBM. You've created some coding languages and stuff. What background do you have in law that allows you to create this, that way attorneys and lawyers would be like, oh yeah, this is totally legit. We love this.
So there's a lot of input in there from law professors that I was super lucky to that made themselves available, and they were interested in this, helping me to, even understand how the whole structure has to be and making it as much inviting for lawyers and people from the legal business as possible, right? I do, as a freelancer, I do have sufficiently involuntary experience with courts and how all that works, because every 5 years or so somebody doesn't pay you, and then you have to learn that part of life too. And you also learn how it's completely deficient, right? It's really not working well, and people who know the tricks, they use it against you really, really badly, right? So that there is something there, that this 2,000-year-old industry is ripe for disruption, that's pretty obvious, right? I mean, from some simple facts, like we're all supposed to follow bookshelves of laws that nobody is really able to even read in their whole lives, but we're still expected to follow all of them, right? I mean, obviously this can't.
This is British law, maritime law here, don't you know?
I don't, right? But it doesn't help me.
Yeah, a lot of that stuff you're just like, what? This doesn't even make any sense. So let me ask this. Let me ask this as a potential case study. So we did some work with a crypto company, right? And we agreed upon a price, and let's say that the price of that we agreed on was, say, 20 grand, and then the token price is at a certain low price. Let's say it's at 2 cents, and then you go, okay, so you owe us 20 grand. And we're going to pay, and here's the price, the strike price we agree upon, right? 2 cents. But then you do all this work and you blow up their token ends up exploding because you've done a great job. Now the token's worth 90 cents, and now they want to pay you like 25,000 tokens because, oh, well, our token's worth 90 cents. Is there a way to do digital escrow in a way with your system to be like, okay, so $20,000 worth of 2 cent tokens is this amount locked up. Once this work is done, you get the keys, or it will unlock to you, to make it easy. Because I think one thing in crypto is that companies aren't paying correctly based on what we agree upon because they don't have to, and there's no real good escrow system in place.
Yes. So the solution to that is a lazy one, is a simple one, using stable coins, right? And there are more interesting stable coins coming out now, for example, out of Wyoming, where you have 102% coverage. And that is really what you do then to avoid this kind of trap, right? That is one of the things that is basically on the roadmap for this right now. What it is doing, it is dealing in native tokens, but it's relatively straightforward to build this towards opening this up for the token of your choice, right? But what we have right now, that is, for example, in E for the Eternity blockchain, or in Ether for Ethereum, and isn't quite there yet, to avoid also this pitfall that you were describing at this point. That's one of the things where, for example, another thing is, I'm a believer that we will have an additional layer in the blockchain world where you will, to a certain degree, be able to roll back what a smart contract does. Because my ambition really is to make it, to be an interface, basically, to the legal world, right? To really make it useful for normal business, right? And the fact of the matter is that a judge can, in the end, retrospectively, like, change the truth, right? So to be able to be in sync with the law, you have to find a way that a judge can actually do pretty much anything they want to a contract, right? But that's very possible. And that's also something that from the beginning was part of this concept. That's not maybe what the focus is on right now. That's not the AI part, so to say. That's a different architectural element about blockchains. But yes, I mean, that's definitely things that, to be useful for real business, so to say, you want to address these questions.
And of course, we're talking about the law. Smart contracts apply to, so many things across the blockchain space. I'm thinking NFTs, right? If I go and I look up the Bored Ape Yacht Club address in the contract, I'm met with, language that I don't understand, right? I don't get this. Can Lexon take an existing contract and rewrite it in plain English and be functional, or is that a goal of something that you want to be able to do?
I think the goal here is, what you would want to have is something that reads like Lexon in place of the Solidity contract, right? Mm-hmm. And that is something that we're definitely working towards. Interestingly, for example, the Remix guys from the Ethereum Remix, they're interested in Lexon because they saw that it actually helps learning Solidity, which is true, because when you type Lexon and you see what Solidity is created from that, that's a great tool to basically get into how Solidity works, right? But unfortunately, going from Solidity to Lexon, not really possible. The third generation language that Solidity is part of, there is something that is basically ripped out, and the level of meaning that is really difficult to build back in, so to say, into Solidity to go then back to natural language. I've been asked this question a lot of time. I wish the answer was yes, because of course, right? A lot of people have a lot of Solidity code that they would love to basically become human readable. But because of this information problem, that there's just something missing. If you have something that's really just programmed out in Solidity, that path directly is not what you can have, unfortunately.
Can you give us an example, right? I want you to share your screen right here. I'm going to put this up, and I want you to go ahead and give us an idea and kind of walk us through, what does this look like in its simplest form? Tell us what we're looking at here.
Yeah, so we're looking at a compiler right now, and at an online compiler that is on the left-hand side having a field where I'll be typing Lexon text, and then on the right-hand side, you're going to see Solidity text popping up, actually, and I'll be talking to that a little bit, what you're seeing. And I'm going to use exactly the code that you see at the first code on the as a first example on the lexon.org website. So I just type lex escrow, right? And what the compiler does from that is visible now on the right-hand side, and it basically just creates an empty Solidity contract, right? It just says Pragma Solidity contract escrow constructor public payable. That's all. And then I start with the definitions. Now I write payer is a person. So that's the definition block, what that every Lexon contract starts with. And on the right-hand side, you see it starts to fill in the fields into the object or into the contract. And it writes address payable payer. And then the constructor gets a command payer equals message sender, right? And then I continue with that. And I, as the next element, I'm the payee. And on the right-hand side, it adds, again, address payable payee. And then I add the notary, for example, or arbiter, as it's called on the on the website, and then I add the fee, that is an amount, and so on. So that's, and now on the right-hand side, I have a contract defined with the different elements in it: address payable payer, address payable P, address payable notary, UN fee, constructor, address payable P, address, and so on, right? And on the left-hand side, I just have payer is a person, P is a person, notary is a person, fee is a amount.
So is that pretty standard? Is that going to be in every one that you write when you're like payer is a person, this is a this, that is a that? Is there like a dictionary that you're pulling those things from? Or I would say like payer is this company, payee is Travis. I mean, because it's almost like there's like little blocks there and it's generating that text. But if you don't know what you're supposed to put, maybe even over there in that left column, you're going to be like, okay, so what are my options to even put in there?
Yes. So you have, as I said, right, the focus is on making the whole thing readable. Like when you write a contract, like a legal agreement, you also have to know as a lawyer what you're putting there, right? And learning Lexon is a little bit the same way. Like you have to understand what grammar, what sentences is allowed. And it's actually pretty simple sentences, so it's not difficult to learn. But it's not.
So you just have like some glossary that people can reference, like if some attorney or something is putting something together. Because I see on your website, Joel, if you want to pull that up, the all those different use cases, that's pretty handy. And then also that example, the precise internal model where it's showing clauses in this clause, in the body, and the statement, and the whatever, and the this, and the preposition, and the da, 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 da. So those are all terms that attorneys are going to know. Laymen like us, we're just going to look at it and be glossed over like. Meh.
But you're not going to code a smart contract anyway, Trav.
That's
like
right.
This isn't for us. This is
it is.
Yeah, I guess that's a good question. Who is this exactly for? Would you say it's for attorneys?
No, I think it's for everybody, right? This is really for making smart contracts do a do-it-yourself thing, and making contracting part of what the definition of literacy is, even, right? Because now we're used to smart contracts being something that startups do, that is a big, expensive thing. But it could be different, right? I think the name of smart contracts wasn't such a bad choice, and you could have a completely different culture, how blockchains could be used and how people could be contracting directly with each other, right? And that's actually, I think that is the future. That is going to happen because Lexon makes this so easy, and we will end up having a one-click deployment path where people basically pull from a template, right? And then get help from generative AI to write up what they actually want to articulate. But then at a certain point, they will make sure there's no hallucination in there. And then they will go and click the button and say, okay, this is the contract that I actually want.
So it looks like you're building this on the Eternity chain. Uses the old English A. What do they call that? With the A and the E or together as one character?
Eternity, yeah. So we're going to have a launch of the newest version of the compiler on the Eternity blockchain, and that is something where we're really bringing the work from the last month and years together, where we have a new grammar, we have basically something from scratch that is even more powerful than what we had before, and where we're looking right now for people who want to dive into this, give us feedback, become part of the community, basically. And the Eternity website, the Eternity blockchain basically has this advantage. It is, in a certain sense, what Ethereum would have loved to be. It is very accessible and it's very cheap, and you can really do microtransactions with this and try things out, right? So that's a great advantage. It has very good engineering. It has like super versed telecom and finance programmers who created the smart contract language and the whole chain. So that's all it's pretty sound, and it's a pretty strong proposition about how a blockchain should actually be to be useful.
That is fascinating. So I guess, I was reading on here, it talks about, the Eternity blockchain, and you have a token that's going to be built on top of this. So maybe, I know this is not where you're promoting what you're doing there, but maybe explain would a token even work on your platform?
Oh, it's simple. I mean, you just pay with a token for the compilation, right? There's this online compiler, as I just showed you. And for one successful compilation of a smart contract, you pay 1 token. That's as simple as it is, right? It's basically a voucher for making these translations.
That's simple enough. So why eternity? I mean, if most people are writing smart contracts on Ethereum and these other more popular chains, it doesn't matter, right? You pick the chain to run the utility, but the contract can be deployed on any blockchain.
Oh yeah, I mean, Lexon already has basically 3 targets. It has Solidity, so that's Ethereum. It has Sophia, which is Eternity, but it also has JavaScript, which is the computational law community and has nothing to do with blockchain at all. Where computational law is something that exists since the 40s, basically, is all about analyzing a contract, making a computer understand the contract. And they are not even interested in blockchain because they feel like that's just making the problem even more complicated. They're happy to actually just work with a normal programming language, and it doesn't have anything to do with trust-like technology underneath. Of course, I find trustless is more than the icing on the cake, right? Is really what makes the huge difference, and I think what the huge business potential of the whole thing is. But the computational law community is really happy about the JavaScript version of this. So that's just 3 targets. We will extend this. We will go beyond this because that is an expression of how Lexon is really the nexus, if you want, between natural language and different target languages and different technologies, because it really has the meaning in an internal model of what the document means. And then creating out of that different computer languages is not trivial, but it's relatively fast, actually.
So there you go, Trav. If you're going to school to learn how to use Solidity, then Henning's putting you out of business, basically.
No, it's really interesting. So now I'm going down a rabbit hole. Let me ask you this then, as a bystander of this, but somebody who has said Eternity is, which looks like a eternity, but Eternity is a great product. So I'm looking at this like, what makes it a great product? Because I'm looking at it right now. I'm looking at, it's been around almost 6 years, and it has basically had very little volume overall. Overall looking at it since like June of 2021. And so it looks like maybe they're still building stuff, but their market cap $16 million. So either it's something that's really awesome that a lot of people don't know about, or people are just kind of forgetting about it. Like, what's your overall thoughts on Eternity, and why is that a good solution?
Yeah, I mean, this really reminds me to the time when I was writing analysis about blockchains for IBM. And at some point, I had written an analysis about IOTA. And I basically said, well, it doesn't really work, right? And they didn't care. And then later they asked me again if I would write an analysis about IOTA again. And I still said, why do you think the analysis is going to be different, right? Yeah, well, there was investor interest. Of course, my analysis was not different, but looking at what a blockchain can actually do and how sound it is underneath is pretty different from looking at what the numbers are and how successful and popular it is. And I can tell you, Eternity totally tanked because they had an attack in the exactly wrong moment. Not that Bitcoin never had this big blow up, or Ethereum had this big blow up, also like in the middle of a DEFCON. But for Eternity, it wasn't forgiven, right? They just suffered really badly from it. I can look into what the quality of the chain is myself. I know what happened. I know where the code wasn't perfect at that point, like it wasn't for Ethereum or Bitcoin at exactly that time of maturity, right? So yeah, that happens. I mean, that's an unfortunate truth that I think what is actually making it big and what is technologically on a good level can be very different things, right?
It looks like they're still building, though. It looks like they're still in it. They're still doing stuff. They're launching. They've upgraded their nodes. They've been going through and creating.
They're not the only project, right? That is in the moment not in the limelight, but where people are convinced of what they're doing there, and they're toiling away. And it's just the
Right.
reality, right? You have the stars, and then you have the people who actually work.
It's like 4 cents right now. So that's crazy. Considering that it was $5 at one point.
Well, is the listing on CoinGecko, is that the actual token now? Because it says, let me put this up on the screen so you guys can see it as well. It says mainnet's live. There's still AE tokens on Ethereum managed by the contract that is here, but the contract expired in 2019. So are people buying when they go here on Ethereum? Are they buying the actual token, or do they have to get the token on the Eternity chain?
No. I mean, that's old news, literally. I mean, this is its own chain, and E is the token of the Eternity blockchain. So,
I'm sorry. What is the AE is the token?
Yeah. So that's the native token of the Eternity blockchain, and it's not.
So this is accurate. What we're looking here, what people are trading as of this recording, it's around 4 cents a token.
Yeah. And it started as an ERC20 on Ethereum. But the tag there on CoinGecko is not. That's old news.
That's not correct. So CoinGecko is not updated.
Kind of like us, Trav. Old news.
Old news. Maybe you need to go to CoinMarketCap and take a look at it, because it is. If like people are looking at that, they're seeing the old ERC20 address there, and they're going to plug it in and check things out, but that might not be correct. So that's good. Good to know that it might not be in the right place, and might want to go check it out. It looks like the price is still accurate, but it just might be the wrong address in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which is dangerous.
Well, Henning, appreciate you.
Joel, have you done any research on Eternity at all? Because
no, this
I've
is
never looked at.
Just another chain that I've never heard of, and it seems like there's more and more. We're going to let them duke it out, and hopefully the cream will rise to the top. This is one of the things you look for in chains is use cases. And certainly Lexon, real English smart contract coding could be a very practical use case for people.
To say that again, I mean, the good point about that is it's really fast, it's not clogged, and it's really economic to have your smart contract on them. So having the do-it-yourself environment of your dreams.
Right. Well, you said something. You said it's what Ethereum wishes it had been. And then I hear you say that, and I go, wait a second. Whoa, this dude worked at IBM. He was doing the Hyperledger stuff, and he's saying that about this. Then that makes me want to go and look at it. Obviously not financial advice to anyone, but it's fascinating to hear why you think that this is maybe a better solution.
Yes, and by the time this is airing, then hopefully people will be looking out also what the ERC20-like token, the Lex token on the Eternity blockchain is doing, because that's called AEX9 on Eternity, and that's how we are going to start on
AEX9?
I am AEX9.
That's ERC20 standard on how it's called on Eternity, AEX9.
Got you.
And the
it's
token
gonna be like the LEX token or something?
Exactly. We're going to have an LAX token, and that's how you buy the compile time.
Very nice.
There you go. Well, listen, hey, we appreciate you coming on and educating us. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the conversation today, and there's links in the show notes to the various places that we went. Thanks again, Henning. Appreciate you.
Thank you guys so much.
Two dudes talking crypto. Two dudes talking crypto. Joel and Travis are just two dudes talking crypto. Oh, yeah.
Hey, thanks, Henning, for this info today. We do appreciate it. Hey, Trav, hearkening back to our conversation prior to the interview, did you ever imagine, as a kid, that you'd be doing something like this today? Did you see yourself as an author, as a speaker, as a broadcaster? Did you think that you would be, this tech fiend that would be talking about the latest happenings in technology advancements?
I thought I would be actually in some sort of form of entertainment level, because I know I like crack jokes. And when I went to college and I took all the improv classes, and I got selected to go to Second City. And right when that happened, we found out that my girl was pregnant with my first kid. So I was like, oh, I guess I can't go to Chicago to Second City. So that's just one of those destiny checkpoints that I look at and I go, whoa. But
instead you're stuck here with me.
I'm down to stand. I got to do sit down comedy with you and this shitty podcast. I mean, bad podcast. Good. But my first job was a radio disc jockey as one of your first ones, and so it's like, being in front of a microphone doesn't feel foreign to us at all, right?
No, it's very, very natural. And, when you're first to DJ, it's like, all right, what am I doing here? And maybe you're a little nervous. And when you first speak on stage, you might be a little nervous. And now all of it, we've done it for so long. It's like walking into our own living room, whether you're at a stage in front of thousands of people or you're in front of a microphone broadcasting to thousands of people. It's all,
I know when we went on Radio City Music Hall, dude, I wasn't even really nervous. At all. I was like, dude, I'm going on Radio City Music Hall stage. And I'm like, where are my nerves? I don't have any.
I know. It's a weird thing.
You know what? Maybe because it's like there's a comfort factor between you and I are going on stage right now. Boom, let's go kill it. So maybe that kind of diffuses any of my potential nerves that I would have had. But Radio City Music Hall seems to me to be one that in my mind historically, I know that even when I go do a keynote, sometimes if there's a big crowd, I'm like, all right, let's go, T-dubs. But Radio City Music Hall, that place was freaking packed. And we went on stage after Spike Lee. Yeah. And I was like, okay, here we are. Let's go.
Well, it was probably because I was hodling you, backstage beforehand and singing you a little lullaby.
You're hodling me closer, Tony Danza.
Hey, everybody, thanks for joining us. Wait until next week. We finally got Dan Mapes of the Spatial Web to join us for an interview. And this is going to be mind-blowing for you guys because you are going to see into the future of the internet like never before. This is not hyped up hyperbole here. Hyperbole? Hyperbole is when you hyper burps. Yeah. Hyperbole. Yeah. This is the real deal. This is not, hey, maybe tech is going to go this way. Maybe this protocol will become. No, this is happening already. And Dan has got a lot to say. You want to just go ahead and bookmark now. Make sure you are subscribified, that you have your notifications on, that you ring all the bells. And this would be a great time to turn to any nerdy friends you have that understand the vision of, hey, technology is changing. We need to keep up with where the puck is going. This next episode is going to show you exactly where it's going. And so you want to share this with others.
Yeah. And I'm editing it right now, and it's going to be for the podcast, but then also it's going to have some cool visuals if you're looking at it at YouTube. So choose your poison, baby.
There you go. Thanks as always. We appreciate your reviews, especially if they're 5-star. If they're not, we don't appreciate them as much. In fact, don't waste your time.
Yeah, if you give us a 1-star review, then we mock your little tiny micro penis. What?
Look at the tiny.
I saw this. It says, what we ought to do is we ought to stop glorifying these serial killers and giving them like, oh, it's the Green River murderer, the strangler, the son of Sam. They should just call him like the micro penis maniac. And they're like, man, like I don't want to be one of those guys.
All right. Well, there you go. I'm going to file that under not a bad idea. So
don't give us a 1-star, please.
Yeah. You and your little micro penis don't do. I think it's projection is what it is. When you give us
Mine's
1 star, it's 1 inch. If you give us, a 5-star, then it's telling us you're you're least average. You got some you got some BDE.
You got these nuts. You got to drop them on the 5 stars.
Hey, everybody, thanks again. We appreciate you. We'll catch you on the next episode, and stay bad.
Film us all.
Who's bad?
The Bad Crypto Podcast is a production of Bad Crypto LLC. The content of the show, the videos, and the website is provided for educational, informational, and entertainment purposes only. It's not intended to be and does not constitute financial, investment, or trading advice of any kind. You shouldn't make any decisions as to finances, investing, trading, or anything else based on this information without undertaking independent due diligence and consultation with a professional financial advisor. Please understand that the trading of Bitcoins and alternative cryptocurrencies have potential risks involved. Anyone wishing to invest in any of the currencies or tokens mentioned on this podcast should first seek their own independent professional financial advisor.